Welcome to Makeup and Murder. I'm in a rush today, so we're gonna get through this murder pretty quick, but it's a really spicy one. This murder was one of the first ones that brought the LGBTQ community into a court of law, so stay tuned. Let's get into it. So this happened January 15th, 1892 in Memphis, Tennessee. Yes, Memphis, okay? Our victim, her name was Freida Ward, and she was slashed. So let's figure out why she was slashed. Primer. Freida Ward and her sister Jo, daughters of a wealthy planter and merchant, met Alice Mitchell and Lily Johnson, also from prominent families, at the Higbee School for Girls in Memphis, Tennessee. Sasha, love her. So, Freida and Alice became very close. It was not uncommon in 1892 for girls to form close relationships and express undying love for each other in letters and in diaries. So, a little bit more than just besties. It was not unusual that Alice and Freida were seen kissing and embracing at this time. After Freida's family moved several miles south of the town of Gold Dust, Arkansas, they began to see Freida's relationship with Alice as unhealthy. One night, August 1891, Freida's older married sister, Ada Volkmar, caught Freida with her suitcase packed, ready to leave for Memphis. Alice had given her a ring, and the two considered themselves engaged. They planned to elope to St. Louis, where Alice would be the man, changing her name to Alvin Ward, and Freida would be the wife. Miss Volkmar stopped the elopement and forbid any other contact or correspondence to the sisters Alice Mitchell and Lily Johnson. So the following January, the Ward sisters were visiting a family friend, Miss Kimbrough, in Memphis. Alice and Lily had attempted to visit them, but were turned away. On January 25th, Alice arrived at Lily's house with a horse and buggy, and they went for a ride. They drove past Miss Kimbrough's house and saw Freida and Jo leaving for the ferry to take them back to Gold Dust, Arkansas. As the sisters were heading to the dock on Front Street, Alice jumped out of the buggy saying, "I'll fix her," allegedly. She ran to Freida, grabbed her by the arm, and slashed her face with a straight razor. Yeah, I know, this escalated quickly, right? This escalated really quickly. But she hadn't really talked to her in a year, right? So she's feeling like broke up with no further contact. So after she slashed her face, Jo Ward knocked Alice down and hit her with an umbrella as Freida ran away. So she caught up with her and then slashed her face again. Then she pulled her head back and slashed her throat from ear to ear. Woo! Woo Chile! This is a lot. So after she slit her throat, killed her, Alice went back to the buggy and Freida was carried to a nearby office where she bled to death. Alice was arrested that night and Lily was arrested the next morning. This all went down on the afternoon of January 25th, 1982. So the real question is, was Alice driven by insanity, or was this just a tale of love? Did she love her so much? Or was she insane? Was she jealous? Was she upset? This is what the trials are gonna basically try to figure out. And mind you, this is 1892. So it wasn't much talk about lesbianism in the court of law, period. It just wasn't a thing yet. So in the trials, I'm using Fawn, by the way, and a warm honey. So in the trials, Lily Johnson's habeas corpus was held first to determine whether there was enough evidence to try her. Although it wouldn't determine anyone's ultimate fate, it was far less important than the pending murder of Alice Mitchell. And it would be the most significant trial held in Memphis to date. So pretty much everybody came out to see this trial. It was a big deal in them. The anticipated crowd would be so large that Judge Julius Dubois delayed the trial so that the opening could be constructed to enlarge the courtroom until it had a seating capacity to rival Memphis' largest theaters. On the day the trial opened, Judge Dubois was overwhelmed by a crowd of 1,000 people of all races and nationalities, about half of them women. In an effort to stem the confusion, he issued a ballroom order. Ladies to the right, gents to the left. Women were drawn to the hearing in numbers for an unprecedented criminal trial. So the girls came out for this, and I mean, we can assume that members of the LGBT community were represented in this courtroom, right? They wanted to see like what was going on. Of course, there were loved ones of the two girls, and they went to an all-girls school, so the information about this trial probably spread really quickly. And you know how it is. Something like this was what we would call tea nowadays. Flash my face. Right. So all of the salient evidence came out in this hearing. The unnatural love of Alice for Freida, the attempted elopement, Lily's intimacy with Alice and the Ward sisters, and the vivid descriptions of the murder scene. The defense argued that Lily had no idea of Alice's intention that day and in no way assisted her. The proof is evident that the defendant aided and abetted in the commission of the crime, a crime the most atrocious and malignant ever perpetrated by a woman. That's what Judge Dubois ruled. So Lily Johnson was released on a $10,000 bail that day. Alice Mitchell pled not guilty to murder, but also entered a plea of present insanity, which meant that before she could be tried for murder, a hearing would be held to determine if she were mentally fit to stand trial. Oh yeah, the girls were the boys back in this day. The girls were the boys. An insanity plea, she did what she had to do, for sure. All right, so to show a genetic disposition of madness, Alice's father testified that his mother, that the girl's mother, who had 7 children, suffered from insanity after the birth of her first child and had to be committed to a lunatic asylum for several months. After the death of the child, she became increasingly unstable. Her testimony brought by the defense stressed Alice's boyish behavior growing up as an indication of her insanity. So this is big because this is kind of where that stud, boyish, dangerous kind of stereotype came from when we talk about lesbians. So, and that's a stereotype that's still, I would say, perpetuated today. Now, we do know the lesbians that are really girly, but others, you know, they are seen as boyish, manly, even if that is what they attempt, you know, to portray, even if that's their thing that they portray, it's still a stereotype. It's still a stereotype that lesbians are mannish, aggressive, dangerous. Maybe not dangerous as much nowadays, but it's still there. I mean, talk to an older person. So this hearing in Memphis was kind of like the first sightings of that kind of belief and that thought. And I think that's really, really interesting that came up out of that. So the engagement ring inscribed A to F was entered as evidence, and the story of the elopement was retold. Frank Mitchell, Alice's brother, testified that Alice had once tried to commit suicide by taking laudanum over Freida's infidelities. So Freida's infidelities, they lived in a whole different place. And yeah, she was about to kill herself over the fact that Freida was an infidel. You know? That is, I don't want to say that's insane, and I don't want to say that I feel her. So I'm just going to say nothing, and I'm just going to, you know, leave it at that, because I think that we have all been through situations where we have felt like, you know, we were done for. Take me to the king. So maybe this was just hers, but I don't want to say that that makes you insane. And also at this time, the mental health wave really just started within the past 10 years. All right. So the prosecution argued that although Alice's behavior was strange, it wasn't insane. Her tomboyish behavior was not even unusual. It's just a normal part of growing up. However, the defense brought in a number of psychologists who unanimously thought Alice was insane, probably incurably insane. Her predisposition to insanity was triggered by an exciting cause, the emotional disturbance of love and jealousy. Alice's belief that she could marry Freida, they said, was a manifestation of her insanity. Crazy, right? All right. Took the time. Doing good. Doing okay. I actually have to hurry up. All right. So, boom. Alice said, so throughout the trial, Alice was like not really reacting to anything. They called her, her tone docile, right? So she wasn't really like, it didn't seem like she really understood the magnitude of what happened, or, you know, just not really there, you know, not really upset about her actions. So Alice, they gave her the chance to talk, and of course she blew it. So she says, I wanted to cut her because I knew I couldn't have her, and I didn't want anyone else to have her. My intention was to cut Freida's throat, then my own, but Joe's interference made me cut Freida again. It's giving psycho, I'm not gonna lie. The trial lasted 10 days, and the jury returned the verdict of insanity. She was committed to the Tennessee State Insane Asylum at Bolivar, Tennessee. Charges against Lily Johnson were later dropped. So the aftermath. Officials at the Tennessee State Insane Asylum could have at any time declared Alice Mitchell competent to stand trial, but they didn't. In 1898, she reportedly died of tuberculosis. However, one of her attorneys later stated in an interview that she committed suicide by jumping into a water tower. So, what's the wrap up? In 1892, the terms lesbian and homosexual were not commonly used in America. At that time, the medical term for what Alice had going on was called sexual inversion, the condition where a person inappropriately took on the characteristics of the opposite sex. Crazy, right? And now we're in an opposite sex town nowadays. You know, you can switch it up at any time. Like, cheers to freedom. Cheers to growth of, you know, medical fields and all of that. Because if that was the case, so many people would be locked up in an insane asylum, and that's just very disheartening. While much was said about the unnatural love Alice Mitchell had for Freida Ward, there was never a suggestion that their relationship was sexual. The public also had trouble accepting Alice's sexual inversion as the driving force behind the murder. Though Alice never wavered from her assertion that she killed Freida for love, two other stories were told as a motive for the murder. Alice, Lily, and the Ward sisters were fast girls, always flirting with men. Freida was prettier than Alice and had more luck with men. Alice was jealous of Freida's beauty and was only trying to disfigure her face, not murder her. That's definitely a different take. I don't know. I'm still pretty convinced with the lesbianism I love you take, because that, like, see that today. Another take was that a mysterious man was involved, which wouldn't surprise me because men. He followed Alice's buggy and disappeared after the murder. The murder was a result of rivalry of the love for this man. The folk song Alice Mitchell and Freddie Ward expresses this view. So they made a song about it, pretty on brand for Memphis as well. But yeah, guys, that is the story. Tell me what we think. What do we think about this? I just think that it's really interesting that one of the first cases with about this came up out of Memphis. I think it's kind of awesome in a way. I mean, aside from the whole somebody died part. But I think it's really important for us to like know the history of these type of things. And do you think that Do you think that it's okay to hurt people because they hurt you? That's kind of a philosophy question, but seriously, like, do you think that? No, I can never say that Freida was in the right, because you weren't, especially not a straight razor. And why did she? I ain't gonna say why. I guess she was traveling. Everybody kept a straight razor back in the day tucked in the pocket. That was like the common day mace. Everybody was getting cut. So that's really interesting. So I'm almost done with my makeup. I'm really rushing. And this is supposed to last me all night. That's why I'm overdoing it with the powder. I'm getting on a Zoom call meeting thing. So I don't want to be shiny. But that contour does have to be sharp, baby. All right, 2:34. I have about 5 minutes. Oh, yeah, this is the look. Let me put my shirt and then I'm going to say bye to you guys. Okay, guys, so this is the look. Thanks for tuning in to Makeup and Murder. And I'll be back with another juicy one. Okay? Bye.